I'm John Broadbooks, Vice President for Communications for Illinois Realtors, and today we have a special video edition of State Capitol Report. Joining me from the Springfield State House lobbying team are two of our lobbyists. We have Greg St. Aubin, Senior Vice President for Governmental Affairs for Illinois Realtors. We also have Julie Sullivan, Senior Director of Legislative and Political Affairs, joining us. So let's start with today, the session that's ongoing right now. Lawmakers are back. It's always a busy time, but in the background of this, we have an election going on. What does that mean for our members and for the session?
Well, spring session is always interesting, John, as you know, but the election figures very heavily into this particular legislative session. The election is coming up, and that can be a good thing and a bad thing for us. On the one hand, the legislators that are running for re-election are going to be wanting to pursue perhaps some controversial legislation that makes them look good back home if they've got a primary race. On the other hand, the legislature isn't in as much as they might typically be in a non-election year. So it can kind of cut both ways.
Speaking of the elections, for our work product and our work emphasis, we are concentrating a lot on the primary elections, and we are major players, and we thank the members throughout the state for all the resources they provide us to make sure that Illinois Realtors are such a major player in the primary and the general elections.
Now, every year when there's an election, Illinois Realtors is heavily involved through a couple of mechanisms. Talk a little bit about how we make a difference in some of these races.
Well, John, the Realtors are one of the biggest groups involved in advocacy in elections, both at the national level, the state level, and even the local level. And we are heavily engaged through member resources, independent expenditures, the Realtors Political Action Committee. I mean, we are major players in these races. So while the legislators are focusing on their elections, we're also focusing on our involvement, and that is absolutely key to our success going forward.
Of course, one of the fundamental things, I mean, it goes really beyond money. One of the strengths that realtors have is we have a lot of members who vote, right?
Absolutely. I think we can take great pride, John, in the fact that the percentage of realtors who are registered to vote and vote in elections is higher than the statewide average. I would remind anybody that has not registered yet, there are still some time to get out there and register to vote, because your involvement in making sure that the best qualified and the best candidates to support our issues are elected to office.
So Julie, this is kind of a big week. I mean, there's always a lot going on during session, but in particular this week is busy.
Right, the upcoming week marks the governor's budget address to the General Assembly, which kind of sets the tone for the rest of the year, both negative and positive. And then we also have the bill introduction deadline, which is Friday the 16th of February, and that's when we really will have an idea of what all is out there. Typically, in the last week of bill introductions, there's a flurry of bills. So we anticipate thousands of bills being introduced, and we'll narrow down our list of about 150 to 200 bills that we're actively going to be looking at.
Well, John, and it's important that, I mean, there are so many bills that affect real estate. We literally review at least the summary of every single bill. I mean, thousands.
And I've seen both of your desks.
Okay.
And it's not pretty. They're covered with paper.
And so we look at least at the synopsis of every single bill that's introduced.
There are more than 5,000 bills that are filed in any given year. This year, there's at least one bill that we're probably going to be watching that has a big impact on a lot of our practitioners, and that's rent control. Talk to me about why this is such an important issue for us.
John, rent control is a totally outdated policy. Most economists just completely dismiss it as sound housing policy. What it's basically saying is, landlords, we're going to freeze your income. We're going to freeze your ability to increase rents if your costs increase. And of course, tenants may initially love that. But what it does is reduces money available for maintenance and for updating the property, and it just encourages a complete disinvestment in property and decreases actually the amount of affordable housing. In the places that they've had it, it has never been a success. And there are a couple of bills out there this year, some of them backed by a couple of the gubernatorial candidates. And so this thing is really ramping up, and we need our members engaged in this. This is going to be a big battle for us.
So rent control obviously is going to be big, but my understanding is there's always a package of other issues that affect our members as well.
No doubt. Every year we have a lot of the same issues that come up. Bills that deal with local government powers, since we have more units of local government than any other state by far. But because of that, because their reliance on property tax to fund them, we keep a close eye on them. We have been very supportive of efforts to consolidate, to streamline, and to make local government more efficient. We hope to see more of that this year. If there are bills out there, we will be strong proponents of those. There are also bills dealing with property tax caps, property tax relief, always very popular, especially in an election year, as Greg mentioned. And the governor also mentioned property tax relief and a look at the property tax assessment process as something we should look at. And House Revenue Committee is already taking up, they passed a resolution, in fact, last year, to take on that overview of the whole property tax assessment system. Everyone wants an efficient, an accountable, and a transparent system on property taxes. So we look at those. And landlord-tenant issues, there are always a variety of regulatory issues. And of course, we are licensed by the state. So any bill that affects any licensees, we're always very, very much involved in.
So Greg, Julie, thank you so much for being here. I know you've had a long week at the legislature, and thank you for joining us. And I remind you that the digital edition of this State Capitol Report is always available online. It's updated just about every Friday during a legislative session, and you can find it at IllinoisRealtors.org. Also, on April 10th, make sure you're in Springfield for our annual Capitol Conference. We are going to pack the convention center with realtors. Last year we had more than 500 people show up for this, and this year we want to have well over that number to be able to tell legislators about the issues that matter to us, including rent control. Also, we're going to undoubtedly have a call for action this year, and when we issue these, we need you to take part. We need you to contact your legislators. Most of the time, it's a very easy process where it's just a couple of mouse clicks, but it's critically important that you let lawmakers know where you stand on our issues.